Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with James Dickman. Coming up tonight, the murder of an 87-year-old man in Greenford, stabbed to death whilst he was on a mobility scooter. More on a killing that has shocked the capital. London's Hosepipe ban to come into effect a week today, with 10 million across the capital and in the Thames Valley all affected. Well, it's because of what Thames Water call unprecedented weather conditions that we've seen. We have had some very heavy showers this afternoon with flash flood warnings in place. An update on London's weather in the next 10 minutes. And inflation soars to 10.1%, a 40-year high, a figure that's even worse than analysts feared as the cost of living crisis continues to squeeze. And on the subject, we'll hear about how Londoners in their 40s are developing retirement anxiety due to the crisis and what can be done to settle any panic. That's all on the way, but first this evening, an 87-year-old man has died after being stabbed while riding a mobility scooter in West London. The Met Police said emergency services were called to Caton Road in Greenford just after 4 p.m. yesterday. The man, who has been named as Thomas O'Halloran, was treated by paramedics but died at the scene. An onlooker who lives opposite where he was stabbed said he saw the victim surrounded by a group of youths. Well, police have released images from CCTV of a man running from the scene as they have begun their search for the suspect. It is the 6th murder investigation to be launched in London in just the last 4 days. Well, Chief Superintendent Sean Wilson spoke at the scene today.
We believe that Mr O'Halloran was stabbed in Western Avenue shortly after 4 p.m. yesterday, Tuesday the 16th of August, before managing to travel 75 yards or so on his mobility scooter to Runnymede Gardens, where he flagged down a member of public for help. So please, if you saw anything, we do need to hear from you. As of now, the public will see extra officers patrolling the area over the coming days. They are there to protect you and to help you.
There you go, the scenes from that tragic incident in Greenford. Now, elsewhere today, the UK inflation rate has hit double digits. We knew it was coming, but perhaps not this fast, as the Office for National Statistics says the rate is now at 10.1%. The last time price rises were in double digits was in February 1982. Rising food and drink prices made the biggest contribution to the change in inflation between June and July. But the cost of living is rising across the board, driven partly by energy costs and the Ukraine war, but also factors such as the cost of raw materials. Laura Suter is from finance firm AJ Bell.
What we're seeing is a lot of what people will already know is that food costs are rising dramatically. Energy costs, of course, have risen lots, and petrol costs are also rising. One other area that we're seeing prices increase is with mortgages, because the Bank of England has increased interest rates, and so that is pushing up mortgage rates. So they're the main areas where we're seeing big price rises. But what it means is that what you could buy last year is now much more expensive this year. What a lot of people are doing is working out ways that they can save money. So, for example, if we take food prices, that's one area where we've seen a big increase, and people can't just cut back on food and not buy any food. And so what people are doing is switching to discount supermarkets or trading down where previously they bought branded items, they're now buying own brand items. When it comes to petrol, people are just using their car less, trying to fill up less, trying to hunt out cheaper petrol stations. And obviously with the energy prices, there's not a lot people can do there. The price cap is fixing that energy rate. The Bank of England's expecting a recession later this year. That's what it's forecast. And then it's forecast that the UK will stay in recession through much of next year. So that's the base case at the moment. Obviously, there's so many different factors at play at the moment that would impact that, from what the rate of inflation does to the government's support on offer and government policy when a new Prime Minister comes in, all the way through to what the Bank of England is going to do with interest rates. So there's still lots of variables. It's not as certain at the moment, but it is what's being forecast for later this year.
There you go. Well, Chancellor Nadeem Zahawi commented on today's news. He was speaking at a holiday club taking place at Sydenham School.
This is a difficult time. There are no easy options. We see Putin deliberately use energy as a tool to get back at us for the help we're putting into Ukraine, and that is obviously impacting families because of energy costs, impacting families because of the cost of food, as we saw today with the inflation numbers. We are working on two things. One is to deliver that £37 billion package. We are midway through that, so in a couple of months' time, everyone will see £400 off their energy bills. Of course, energy bills are rising, I recognise that. Those who need additional help will see more help through the Household Support Fund, which we're extending till March of next year, working with local authorities who know those families that need that additional help. And the other thing that I'm doing that we're really focused on is what more do we need to do for January? We prepare all the options ready for the incoming Prime Minister on the 5th September to hit the ground running of what more we can do, whether it is the green levies that we need to remove to help with those energy bills, cutting taxes, increasing our gas production here at home. And of course, the one thing that I'm beginning to really get concerned about is the impact on small businesses because of the energy spike that they're seeing, which is obviously going to put huge pressure on SMEs. 5.9 million small businesses are the backbone of the British economy.
Well, inflation is expected to continue rising this year, with the Bank of England predicting it won't go down to the target of 2% for another 2 years. Elsewhere in London today, Thames Water has announced a hosepipe ban for 10 million customers across London and the south of England. It will come into force from the 24th of August. It comes after reports of the River Thames reaching its lowest level since 2005, and unprecedented weather conditions we've seen the last 2 months. It means people will not be able to use hose pipes to water gardens, wash cars and windows, or fill paddling pools. Those found to be breaching the rules could be fined up to £1,000. It comes after London was classified as experiencing an official drought on Friday. More than 70 firefighters began tackling 2 separate blazes near London Bridge this morning. A major fire in the railway arches on Union Street in Southwark was reported at around 9:20, and 10 crews were sent to bring it under control. Another 3 fire crews were sent to London Bridge Station, where a smaller fire broke out, causing heavy smoke, as you can see here from people posting on social media about both incidents. Unrelenting plumes billowing out of those buildings. Network Rail said 4 lines have been closed earlier today, and trains were diverted away from the station, while the Jubilee line on the Underground was also part suspended. Now, Network Rail's chief negotiator, Tim Shoveler, has called the upcoming strike action a very sad day for the railway and urges passengers to only travel if they really need to. Well, speaking at Euston Station today, he outlined his frustrations about the industrial action taking place tomorrow and Saturday.
We continue to believe this strike is unnecessary, damages the railway industry, damages our customers and freight customers, and our staff have lost, easily several £1,000s each now in lost wages because of this strike action. It's very sad, actually. I think it's sad for the railway. 5 days of industrial action, 6 on Saturday, and it's unnecessary. This is the point. It will not improve the offer. Just going on strike does not create more money for us to give people a bigger pay rise. We want to give our staff a pay rise. We've made a really good offer that's actually been accepted by managers, and 71% voted in favour of it. So we've made a really good offer. So this is unnecessary, and it will not help resolve the issue. It will not mean there's more money on the table to make a better offer.
There we go. Well, if you're out on foot because of those rail strikes, let's take a look at the weather now. Some thunderous roars from behind me this afternoon, and some heavy rain in patches today. Well, as we go through into the night, the showers will tend to ease and dwindle in number. Overnight it will become largely dry with some clear spells, lows of around 17 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow we'll have a mix of patchy clouds, sunny spells and the odd sharp shower, mid-20s, and then Friday and Saturday it will begin brightening up once again. Now, still to come this evening, we're heading into a short break now, but stay with us. As a passenger cap at Heathrow Airport is argued as a good thing, one travel expert says. He'll be on as we debate how chaotic the so-called travel chaos at the capital's airports really was.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. Let's just take a look at some main national headlines affecting Londoners today. The government said more than 4,000 UK victims of the infected blood scandal are to receive interim compensation of £100,000 each. It will be given to those whose health is failing after developing blood-borne viruses like hepatitis and HIV, as well as partners of people who've died. It is the first time compensation will be paid after decades of campaigning. The payments will be made at the end of October in England. Conservative leadership candidate Liz Truss said British workers needed more graft in leaked comments. Well, in a recording published by The Guardian newspaper, Truss suggested Britons lacked the skill and application of foreign nationals. Labour said her comments were offensive and effectively branded British workers as lazy. The party's membership are voting for their next leader, who will succeed Boris Johnson as Prime Minister in September. We should have another PM by the 5th. Right. British #1 and South Londoner Emma Raducanu put a dampener on Serena Williams' farewell tour after thrashing the American great in the Cincinnati Open first round. Williams, who is 40 years old now, plans to retire after the US Open, which starts on the 29th of August next week. The 19-year-old is the current reigning US champ. She's from Bromley and she beat Williams 6-4, 6-0. Raducanu will play Victoria Azarenka in round 2. Right, staying with financial issues we discussed earlier, we're all facing at the moment a wave of retirement anxiety is impacting the over 40s in London. That's according to stats from investment firm Aberdeen, who say the majority of people in the capital with worries attribute it to not having saved enough money throughout their life, with more than half blaming the cost of living crisis. Well, Colin Dyer is from the firm and he joined me earlier.
It's certainly a concern to us when we see this significant increase in retirement anxiety. 60% of adults over the age of 40 in London saying that they're experiencing different levels of anxiety. 1 in 10 actually have consulted their doctor about it. Just under 1 in 5 saying they're losing sleep at night. We believe retirement should be an exciting time with, new opportunities and potentials. And it's a shame that we understand why it's happening, but it's a shame that people are feeling that anxiety.
Yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? Because you're in your 40s, you're still young technically, you've still got a lot to do, perhaps a lot to achieve in life, but at the same time, you don't really want to go into retirement with nothing. So what do you do? How do you find the balancing act between trying to save during such a tough financial time for all of us?
It is that, and for many people, it's always just trying to make the wise choice about spending on today and investing for tomorrow. Obviously, one of the biggest drivers behind this anxiety, 60% of people that we surveyed said they're obviously concerned about the significant increases in the cost of living. Every time we open our gas and electricity bills or fuel up our cars at the forecourt, we're all experiencing that. And that's clearly a cause. The other major driver, 56% of people saying now that they see what they're going to have to spend on retirement, they feel as if they haven't planned as well as they should or maybe saved enough to give them the retirement that they would like to have.
Yeah, and of course, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the mental health effects of this are quite damaging as well. Is it important to let people know, as hard as things might be, not to panic?
I think that's very wise, James. We see this rise in anxiety. I think when we all feel anxious, there's a couple of major things it causes us to do. One is trying to ignore the situation and not face into it, or as you say, panic and overreact. What we want to do, there's plenty of help available out there at Aberdeen. What we want to do is try to help people get control and confidence over their situation. We would encourage them, to engage with some of the free tools that are available, including retirement calculators that we would have. And it just helps them to face into the reality of it, understand what is the retirement going to look like, what different sources of income, could they have access to, a sense of what their expenditure could look like. And if they'll just have the courage to take that first step, it starts to drop down that anxiety that we're all concerned about. Yeah.
The stats often concern people in their 40s, but also, do you think there's a bit of a dread amongst people in their 40s and their 50s even, who are thinking, right, I might have to work until I'm in my late 60s now?
Very much so. Folks that are in their 40s are often at the height of their expenditure. When you get into your 50s, you're really getting pretty close to it. You know, many years ago, I used to run marathons, and when you're trying to run 26 miles, if someone came to you at mile 22 or mile 24 and said, today, instead of running 26 miles, we're going to run 30 or 35, that would be a massive concern. And I think that's almost similar to what many people in their 50s are feeling. They've worked through all their life, they've saved up the assets that they can, they thought their expenditure was going to look at a particular level, and then all of a sudden they're seeing expenditure rocketing, and 10.1% announced this morning from the ONS. So it's just that feeling of losing control. Many people thinking I really could have done with confidently stepping into retirement, and I'm just a bit more anxious about it now.
Colin, there now to the chaos elsewhere when it comes to the issues facing Heathrow Airport. One travel expert is saying the problem has been significantly overstated. Well, the Holiday Extra's chief editor says Heathrow's passenger cap is just good forward planning to make sure people continue to fly without unexpected interruptions, and that it makes even more flights likely to go ahead as planned. Well, let's hear a bit more from him.
We obviously sympathise greatly with anyone whose travel plans have been disrupted by this, but there's only so many options that the airports and the airlines have when they don't have the capacity to put through as many people as might like to travel. You'll have seen, obviously, in half-term earlier this year, the sort of May-June half-term, there were a lot of last-minute cancellations, and that's a lot worse for people's travel plans to turn up at the airport and then discover that the plane's not going to take off with them on it. So I think, from my point of view, from our point of view, what Heathrow has announced this time is a very sensible precaution to ensure that if anything is going to get cancelled, people will have excellent advance warning of that fact so they can make new plans. But also, bear in mind, it is a very, very small amount of the expected air traffic that is being changed about this. The cap's at 100,000 passengers. The expected capacity before the cap was 104, so it's shade under 4%. And actually, Heathrow was expecting to run at about 1,500 passengers above the 100 cap, without this. So, again, every sympathy to the approximately 1,500 passengers a day who are likely to be affected by this. But it's still better to get the advance warning and be able to change your plans now than to find out in October, particularly at half term, that something's gone wrong.
Yeah. Do you think during the chaos across the summer that we've seen, often we have the propensity, particularly when you see the videos go up on social media of the worst cases, to exaggerate these things, and it perhaps wasn't as bad as we thought over the summer?
I mean, I very much agree with that, James. I think travel chaos is something that makes headlines. A number of people getting stuck in a queue, but everyone actually getting off on holiday is a much less exciting bit of news. So no, I very much agree with you there. We asked our customers, and we asked a sample of their passengers at the height of the so-called travel chaos, had it affected them? And the answer we got back was very much 4% of people said they'd got stuck in queues for so long that they missed a plane. That's quite a few people, but nonetheless, 96% of people who tried to get on a plane and fly off took off and landed as expected. And to put it in context, on a normal day in the UK, 97% of aircraft will take off and land as expected. At the height of the so-called travel chaos, it was 94%. So that's an extra 3% of flights that were disrupted. And obviously, there was a lot of news and a lot of video footage saying that people are stuck in queues. And indeed, they were stuck in queues. But almost everybody who wanted to go on holiday, got on holiday, got to where they wanted to go and came back again. So, really, I think, I agree with you strongly that chaos is probably too strong a word.
Yeah. Talking about the reason why there was supposed chaos, it's been put down to COVID in some ways in terms of the financial impact on crippling the industry, but also the impact it was having even on staff still getting it. But also perhaps people in my industry get accused of not bringing up as much as we should. It's probably Brexit is also the reason we can't get enough EU workers to fill the gaps in those positions that we need to fill because we're not in the EU anymore. What do we do now then? Because we can't keep having passenger caps every summer and we can't keep having cancelled flights forever. How do we fix this going forward?
Well, that is the right question, isn't it? And of course, the problem that we've experienced is a relatively short term and a relatively immediate one. You'll remember, of course, that for most of the last 2 years, nobody could really fly very much at all. Air passenger traffic was down to about 20% of the 2019 peak in 2020, and it recovered a bit in 2021. The problem that we saw as an industry this year is that the government very suddenly and very unexpectedly, towards the start of the year, said, actually, that's all fine. You can all fly where you like now. The industry wasn't really spec'd up for that sudden change. A lot of changes had necessarily been made, at our business and at most travel businesses to right size for the level of demand we saw in 2020 and 2021. So they needed to hire an awful lot of people very quickly. They've done that. The airports have done that. The airlines have done that. But there's still some gaps, and this capacity cap reflects those outstanding gaps. By next year, everyone's very confident that we will have hired up as many people as we need, and everything will go smoothly.
There you go, Seamus, with some advice there if you're still planning to go away before the end of October. Now, you're watching London Live News with James Dickman. A reminder of our top story is coming up after the break. Plus, we'll hear about the woman who had to put her degree on hold when she was evicted from her home she shared with her young son, and how the charity shelter helped her get her life back on track. Cyrena's story next.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. Let's just have a reminder of our main stories tonight, starting with this. An 87-year-old man has died after being stabbed while riding a mobility scooter in West London. The Met Police said emergency services were called to Caton Road in Greenford just after 4 p.m. yesterday. The man, who has been named as Thomas O'Halloran, was treated by paramedics but died at the scene. An onlooker who lives opposite where he was stabbed said he saw the victim surrounded by a group of youths. Well, police have released images from CCTV of a man running from the scene as they have begun their search for the suspect. It is the 6th murder investigation to be launched in London in just the last 4 days. Elsewhere in London today, Thames Water has announced a hosepipe ban for 10 million customers across London and the south of England. It will come into force from the 24th of August. It comes after reports of the River Thames reaching its lowest level since 2005 and unprecedented weather conditions we've seen the last 2 months. It means people will not be able to use hose pipes to water gardens, wash cars and windows, or fill paddling pools. Those found to be breaching the rules could be fined up to £1,000. It comes after London was classified as experiencing an official drought on Friday. More than 70 firefighters began tackling 2 separate blazes near London Bridge this morning. A major fire in the railway arches on Union Street in Southwark was reported at around 9:20, and 10 crews were sent to bring it under control. Another 3 fire crews were sent to London Bridge Station, where a smaller fire broke out, causing heavy smoke, as you can see here from people posting on social media about both incidents. Unrelenting plumes billowing out of those buildings. Network Rail said 4 lines have been closed earlier today, and trains were diverted away from the station, while the Jubilee line on the Underground was also part suspended. Transport for London has been urged to reconsider proposals to cut bus services in London, which includes plans to axe 16 routes entirely. The London Assembly Transport Committee has called on TfL to rethink its proposals, as Assembly members are left unconvinced over the potential savings that could result from the cuts after a public consultation saw exceptionally high numbers of responses to the idea. Well, TfL had estimated that changes to 78 bus routes would result in savings of around £35 million a year. Well, talking of water a bit earlier in the Thames specifically, conservationists are calling for greater protections for Europe's smallest whale in the Thames estuary, as a Zoological Society London-led survey shows high presence there. The Greater Thames estuary is a critical habitat for the harbour porpoise, and greater protection for marine mammals in the busy waterway is essential, according to ZSL's new report.
In 2015, we found a really high encounter rate of porpoises in this area, which indicate that the Thames might be an incredibly important place for harbour porpoises, with a similar importance to other areas in UK and Europe that are actually protected for porpoise. They're small cetaceans, which are like dolphins, and they're very sort of shy. They like to avoid boats and aren't very surface active.
This is our hydrophone array, or our underwater microphone system, and this is one of the main tools for our trade. So we're going to be going out looking for harbour porpoises, but we may struggle to see them, but we're almost guaranteed to hear them. So we're going to be listening out for their vocalisations, their ultrasonic click. Humans can hear up to about 20 kilohertz. Porpoises typically vocalise at 130, 140 kilohertz. And this means as the boat passes a group of porpoises, we can essentially work out exactly where they are in the water column and therefore count them. And that's one of the key parameters we're looking for in the survey, is how many porpoises are using the Thames estuary.
Now to this. With the cost of living crisis, 2/3 of students are now struggling to afford their housing costs or are currently behind on their rent, and almost 3/4 of students have had to borrow funds from family to cover essential bills. Well, Cyrena had to put her degree on hold when she and her son were evicted from their home in London. The family ended up stuck in a cockroach-infested hostel room with no kitchen until Cyrena contacted Shelter for help. Well, the council have finally found them a social home last year, and she started studying again while her son is about to start his A-levels. He aspires to go to university as well. Hebe spoke to her about her story.
I was studying a politics and economics course with the Open University while I was in temporary accommodation, and I actually had to put my studying on pause because of the strain, not just financially but emotionally and mentally, while I was trying to fight the council to get suitable accommodation. I was at the time in council property, which was not suitable. It had damp, it had numerous repair situation. And at the time, my building was also under the regeneration scheme, so it was being knocked down. So I was being forced out and made to basically, find a property. But it was not as easy as that. The pressure was basically making me feel like I was almost going to have like a nervous breakdown. It was weighing on my mental health, and not just my own mental health. I'm now seeing the effects that it weighed on my son's mental health.
With this being such a personal issue to you, what, in hindsight of what's happened to you, what would you call on the government to help other people going forward in the future for them not to end up in this situation?
There are a few issues that the government needs to deal with. Section 21 needs to be stopped. We can't have Section 21 evictions. Landlords cannot just be going around evicting tenants for no reason, without cause. And I know Shelter are already doing a lot to try and get that eliminated. Also, the rise in rent prices and the rise in landlords doing things like making tenants pay like 3 months rent up front, or guarantors. Some people don't have guarantors, and some people don't have 3 months rent. Students are struggling at best. The government needs to do more, and they need to help students more. And not just students. Obviously, people are struggling that are working. People are struggling on benefits. It's affecting everybody, and not just people that you would see necessarily on the street. It's affecting people in all different situations and financial situations.
One statistic that really stood out to me was that almost 3/4 of students, about 73%, have had to borrow funds from family to cover essential bills. Now, with the rise coming in October, this will no doubt, this number is going to go up and up. How does that make you feel, that people the only kind of people that might, when the energy bills go up, be able to afford to go to study or go to university or college are students that have a financial stability from their family?
It's sad, because even now I'm worried. I'm concerned. Will I be able to send my son to university? And that's in 2 years, and I'm already thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? We need the government to do more. We need to sit there and think, how is our society going to do better? How are we going to educate our kids? How are we going to educate people in our society? Because a home is a foundation, and if we don't have homes, how is our society going to do better?
Sarina there with her story. Some hope in the midst of all this. She was chatting to Hebe there, right. We're watching London Live News. Coming up in our final part, the Hampstead-born TV presenter Jamila Jamil on her journey to Hollywood, as we take a look at her starring role in the new series She-Hulk.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to the final part of this evening's programme. To start with, a new immersive mural has been unveiled in North London that aims to demonstrate the hopes and aspirations of local people through art. The installation is part of Enfield's GLA's Good Growth Fund, which was launched in 2017 by Sadiq Khan to support growth and community development in the capital. Well, the artwork was inspired by engagement with residents, where 1,000 postcards were placed through doors, inviting them to be part of the process.
The project is called Inside Out, and it is like an immersive mural that is through an underpass of an estate. So it goes through like both sides of an alleyway, and then all on these columns, and then right back to the end wall of this estate. And it was a project that I worked in collaboration with the local community to create. So we ran workshops with local young people, and then we posted out 1,000 postcards to residents of the area asking for their input. And I was particularly asking about like what made them feel good. And then from their answers, we took those answers and we did some workshops with this local youth group, and then came up with a mural that's now been painted. The process that we created, it was like this interactive engagement as well as the actual mural. So for example, at the beginning, we actually built post boxes with the local young people, which we then like screwed and put up in the alleyway. And we also built a post box that we put in the library. And then we did the 1,000 postcards, and then people would post them into the postcards that we had in that alleyway. And then from that, we would take those, and then I'd use that to develop the artwork. And I worked alongside these local architects called Fisher Chen as well, and they sort of created a hoarding that cut off like a little bit of the alleyway where there was particular issues with antisocial behaviour. So it's sort of all integrated into a larger scheme, really. So yeah, it was, and then the piece itself, these sort of the wallpaper that I designed, is quite large scale. So it was quite the endeavour to like paint it, which took weeks in itself with a painting team. So yeah, it was quite a big process. From the engagement that I did, there was basically two main themes that came out from like where people felt their happiest. And the first one was being at home, being indoors, noting that like whilst I was doing the engagement, we were still kind of coming in and out of lockdown. But then the other one was being out in nature. So I was thinking, well, these are like quite opposite ideas. So I had to come up with an idea of how to combine them. And so I thought about how we bring nature into our home. And one of the things I thought about was like how floral wallpaper, like William Morris style wallpaper. So I designed my own wallpaper, like Edmonton-based wallpaper, inspired by the local demographics. So each flower is represented, is a national flower. And I took the census data from the area. And so it has this like, this flower wallpaper that takes up all the spaces reflective of the community that makes up that same space, which is really lovely. And I also grew up down the road, so it felt like quite personal as a celebration of the people who actually inhabit the space. And also at the end of the walkway is a sort of an image of a girl on a sofa, just like on her laptop. And I wanted the end scene to feel like a real like celebration of the domestic, of just like being at home, because in particular this project is a meanwhile project, so this estate will actually be demolished, so that's why it will probably be here for about 5 years and then it will go. And I very much believe in regeneration, and the people on the estate actually voted in favour of regeneration, but it's also like a homage to those homes that won't be there forever. You know, it's like a celebration of the fact that so many memories have been made in these places, and I just wanted to capture that before it all goes. The project was been funded by the Good Growth Fund, which is a scheme run by the Mayor to support regeneration. So that particular artwork, that particular passage, was a space that has felt quite forgotten, but it's used loads. So it's thinking about how artwork can actually change these spaces, the feeling of these spaces, and make people feel like something is happening in the interim before regeneration happens. Because regen takes so many years, like 5-10 years sometimes. The response has been so fantastic. It's so great to see people really enjoying the transformation of a space that was kind of just grey before. And last time I was down there, I saw like a couple, and they were, the guy was like, oh no, this isn't the way you look at it, because it's kind of an optical illusion. So he was like, no, you're looking at it the wrong way. And he was like moving his partner, was like, you need to look at it this way to kind of see the view. And it was just so nice because it's quite playful like that. It's not just a mural on one wall, it really is a space that you can inhabit. So yeah, it's been really positive, and yeah, I'm just really grateful to have had that opportunity to kind of make a difference.
There you go, you can see that exhibition. It's set to stay in place for the next 5 years. Now, finally this evening, after beginning her career hosting TV, Londoner Jameela Jamil has, in her own words, gone from Hollyoaks to Hollywood. Having grown up and begun her career in the capital, she has now moved stateside and stars in the latest Marvel offering. Jameela, who's from Hampstead, was on the red carpet for the LA premiere of She-Hulk alongside co-stars Mark Ruffalo and Tatiana Maslany.
I'm Jennifer Walters. I'm a lawyer. I have great friends. Can we get some shots, please? It's an emergency. A demanding job.
We just started a superhuman law division, and I want you to be the face of it.
And a frustrating family.
Because we didn't ask for this, but you still got to deal with it.
I can't believe I've gone from saying here's Hollyoaks to now standing at a Marvel premiere. My bloody face is out there. This is so ridiculous. It's way too much to handle. No one is more surprised than I am. And I didn't even know I was playing a super character until I got the job and signed the contract. So this has really been like the surprise and joy of my life.
Hollyoaks to Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly. Hollyoaks to Hollywood.
Who's going to protect the world if not people like you?
I would just say that we pay homage to Fleabag because She-Hulk always broke the fourth wall, and so we are very much so trying to stay true to the comics and utilising utilising Fleabag as an artistic and beautiful way to put that in a cinematic universe.
Just want to be a normal, anonymous lawyer.
Can you tell us where She-Hulk is?
Jen, you're a story now.
I think it just, it feels different on set to look out and not see 99% men. It allows you to kind of feel more authentic in your performance and supported by everyone around you. And just knowing that a woman wrote this, 2 women directed this, the cast is majority female, and so many of our department heads were women. We just felt very held, very understood, and we knew via everyone's reactions that we were telling the right stories authentically. And there have been many beautiful stories about women written by men, but they just can so rarely capture the experience because it is so vastly different. And I think a lot of men just don't know for lack of experience. And so we aren't trying to push anyone away, we're trying to call people in to be able to let them see our experience and hopefully, similarly to with the Hulk, stand alongside us, join in.
You know, the comics always existed, these female superheroes, and they're just now getting their films and their series. But when you're telling, Stan Lee created the character, don't get me wrong, but when you're showing a woman and you're trying to show all these nuances and these little quirks of like why it's funny to be a woman in the world or what these weird experiences would be like, it's very helpful to have a pool of women to collect stories from. You know what I mean? To like double check our work almost, and then that leads to even more stories and more comedy. It just starts to feed everything in a really, really organic way. So I think it's important. Yeah.
Your transformations are triggered by anger and fear.
Those are like the baseline of any woman just existing.
We're tapping women, which aren't always, they're not always at the helm, right? So we're getting whatever comes from their brains, and it's inherently going to lead itself to something fresh, and you don't want to be bored. And I love how Marvel continues to creatively go to the next level. So for us, it's like we're doubling down on the comedy, and we have a really cool writer. So I think it's just keeping everything like something that's really new. Yeah.
Oh. Bruce, kind of feels like if I don't transform, I'm gonna die.
Yes, yes, yes. No.
I think She-Hulk, in the comics was always irreverent and always looking back at the audience and at the system within which she was functioning. And I think that is a story that feels very prescient and feels very much like what so many of us are wanting, is like a character with such a hyper-awareness and such an autonomy and all of that, but who's also in a system that they're fighting against. I think that's a very, universal story.
With social media, I think we're all like half in it and half out of it, watching it going, when do we get the break?
Yeah.
When do we get the break free from this?
Yeah.
When do we get to break the third wall or fourth wall or,
all the walls.
And be real, like talk about the whole reality of the thing.
You could be an Avenger. Oh, I'm not a superhero. That is for billionaires and narcissists and adult orphans for some reason.
There you go. The first episode of She-Hulk is airing on Disney Plus tomorrow. Right, let's just take a look at the weather for you before we leave this evening, as we got a bit of welcome relief for the plants with some rain today. And the showers will tend to ease and dwindle in number as we head across the evening. Overnight, it will become largely dry by that point. Clear spells at points as well, a low of around 17 degrees. Tomorrow, we'll have a mix of patchy cloud, few sunny spells, and just the odd sharp shower, mid-20s. Then Friday and Saturday, it will begin brightening up once again, mid-20s for both of those as well. Right, that is all we've got time for this evening. Thank you for watching. Plenty more of our content is on our social media channels. Follow us at London Live. But for now, good night, take care. I'll see you tomorrow.